Welcome everyone to Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And tonight, I am continuing a topic of conversation that it's hard for people to have conversations about sexual predators, especially when they have been propagating in Indian country, when they have been protected by so-called leaders in Indian country. And I told you in my last show, in which I talked about the latest predator, sexual predator, protected by, umbrellaed under the nonprofit Honor the Earth, founded and led by Winona LaDuke. And today I'm going to get deeper into that conversation. I've been off the air for a little bit. This last week was quite tough for us here in the Gomez-Schempp residence. I have lost 3 family members now to COVID-19, 2 in the last week and a half. And it's been really tough for us. Just, took some time to reflect and spend time talking with family and reminiscing and, taking stock of what we have in our lives. So it's been tough, and I have seen a lot of backlash since my last report on Nahko bear from people defending predators and predatory behavior. I know that Winona LaDuke, that Honor the Earth, that Nahko bear, that Medicine for the People, his band, are sacred cows to many people. But not here on a Mexican Crossing Lines. There are no sacred cows when children being predated upon by pedophiles, by protected by organizations like Honor the Earth. There is no place for those kinds of people to hide. And more media will be coming out on Nahko Bear, Medicine for the People, and its connections to Honor the Earth. So for all of the people that have heard my reports about Nahko Bear, that have come onto our social media platforms to attack, to cry, to silence this station, my reporting on this particular predator or the people behind the organization Honor the Earth, you may continue crying. I will continue to report. I think that it is important to expose these kinds of stories, especially when the mainstream media is completely silent on this issue, because that's how this keeps getting swept under the rug. That's how Winona LaDuke and the history that she has and her family's history, specifically her daddy, have of protecting and or working alongside fake shaman, fraud Indians, pretend Indians, predators, felons, and even pedophiles. In the case of Nahko Bear, the accusations are that he on multiple times had sex with minors. And I told you that there was no way in my mind that Winona LaDuke and her organization didn't hear about it, didn't know about it. So we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what all of that means. But first, I want to thank all of you who've sent me information. Thank you. Since the last show, many of you went and dug and dug. I won't even be able to put all of the information I received since my last show into this program. So expect more programs that show the connections. And I think that, it's also important for me to say that for those who are upset about me attacking Honor the Earth, or for those who are upset about me putting Winona LaDuke into the conversation about Nahko Bear, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why. It's not guilt by association. It's guilt by cover-up. It's guilt by silencing. It's guilt by giving agency and protection to predators which have a track record of doing this for years and years, and in some cases even decades. And so thank you to everyone that has sent their support, that has sent their messages, that support the work of our station, that share our shows. Thanks to all of you. Duke, how can folks get hold of us?
Well, they can get hold of us in many different ways. Yeah, I really appreciate that people follow us and participate in our shows. It's been a week and a half since our last show, and it's good to be back. Good to see everybody. Spread this around. Share, so more people can watch this very important program. The last program, go back and watch that. It's on YouTube and on Facebook. And we're multi-streaming tonight on 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead on Facebook, and also on Duke 1517 on YouTube. That's our channel on YouTube. If you want to give us some messages, you can do the call-in line to leave a message. It's 701-566-0917, 701-566-0917. You can also email Cindy at kpppfm.com or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can go to our webpage at kpppfm.com and have a look around. I'm a little behind on some of our videos, but you can always go to the YouTube channel and catch them all there. There's a playlist called The Mexican Crossing Lines, so you can see all of them put in one place. But you can go to our website and look around for our older programming and some of our history and some of our other programming. It's kpppfm.com. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible donation to our station, help support our work so we can continue to move forward and produce the programming that we're producing today and that we will in the future, go to kpppfm.com/donate. Make a tax-deductible donation today. Support our station, help us move our work forward, and thank you all for being here tonight.
I want to mention, before I dive in, I want to mention a few things that are important to this conversation. Standing Rock, okay? I started this radio station around right before, probably a year before, right, Duke, that Standing Rock happened?
Yeah,
was it a year or so?
More than that, yeah.
It was a little bit longer.
Yep.
But that was a big, major thing that we started reporting on at the very beginning of when we were broadcasting on terrestrial air.
Yep,
I know
exactly.
We broadcast online for a long time before we got our antenna running. But the reason I always go back to Standing Rock is because there are many lessons that came out of Standing Rock. We saw the use of people, including children at these protests. Remember when the dogs bit the children?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that said, why were their children brought there? Okay. Kim, thank you for bringing up the fact that you've seen children and mothers in the Portland riots. See? You're starting to put it together when you're able to identify the pattern of behaviors. When I started reporting on the caravans, I told you that many of the people that were in the Caravan Support Network had ties back to the organizations that we saw at Standing Rock, one of them being Honor the Earth, one of those people being Winona LaDuke, right? Within that group, one of the supporters, propagators of information was one of Winona LaDuke's alumni, Pitaya Queen, who was accused of trafficking children. The transgender con artivist from Harvard that I showed you was pushing all of the information about Standing Rock and Winona LaDuke, who she went to school with at Harvard. Both of them went to Harvard. So we see a pattern of this kind of behavior. And I said that the people that founded the Caravan Support Network, the people from Standing Rock that were sent down to Mexico, including Evan Duke, including Myron Dewing, and a lot of the other people that were down there, I told you they were criminals, that they were dangerous. Doug McLean, I told you that these people are not people that any vulnerable populations, especially children in the caravans, should be around, should be near. That nobody should be near these people because they are dangerous. And I wanted to remind everybody about that because it all has, it all has some substantive, meaningful connection to the fact that we keep seeing more and more of these felons and predators among these protesters or con artists, whatever you want to call activists, whatever you want to call them. And that's no different for this Nahko Bear, who is the lead singer of a band called Medicine for the People. Ironically, this guy, being accused by now dozens and dozens of women and girls of sexual assault, predatory behavior, and just ugliness, all around ugliness.
And he's sitting there behind you, right?
Yes, he's the one in leaning against the railing there, standing up with the beard. That's Nahko Bear.
Okay.
Well, another brave reporter, Jacqueline Keeler, a Native American woman, Lakota woman, made a broadcast, a podcast on the channel Pollen Nation. If we could put that up. Would you please read that for folks to let them know?
It's Pollen Nation Magazine was live. Trigger warning. Today, we'll take a look on Pollen Nation Magazine's Facebook Live show at recent and not so recent allegations against sexual predators in Winona LaDuke's inner circle. These include most recently Nahko the Bear, a musician popular with white festival-going crowd, recently accused of sexual predation, assault of minors, and the ongoing lawsuit filed by the former Honor the Earth employee alleging Winona protected accused pedophile sexual predator. Michael Dahl also accusations posted on social media that Winona harbors another alleged pedophile, Anthony Soule. And there are persistent stories of her late father, Vincent LaDuke, a.k.a. Sun Bear, a guru to his own tribe of sexual assault of a minor. What to make of all of this? It is all coincident as a result of being a public person, or is there more to it? We'll take a look at what is publicly known, published, and the lawsuit.
So, that's what the whole show was about. I want to share with you the response, or I guess the statement from Honor the Earth. This is what Honor the Earth had to say about the debacle with Nahko Bear. They posted this just 4 days after this story came out, after all of this information started becoming viral on social media, the multiple accusations, etc., which is also around the same exact time when Nahko resigned from the board. So up and until the time that my original show aired, there hadn't been a statement from Honor the Earth, and they were scrambling to figure out what to do with him, and he summarily resigned. So to all of you Nahko fans, Predator fans, I would just like to say that Honor the Earth is washing their hands of Nahko Bear. And that's saying a lot, because remember, the last time I reported about another predator within Honor the Earth, which they mention here, Mr. Dahl, and the other Mr. Soule that are listed in this Pollen Nations podcast, which was a year ago, that case that has not still to be resolved. This lawsuit alleged that Honor the Earth and Winona LaDuke went out of their way repeatedly to silence the victims and the families of the victims of the predators she harbored. Predators, plural, that she's harbored. They attacked, they silenced, and they threatened. They did, in fact, ruin the career path of the woman that sued them. So for Honor the Earth and Winona LaDuke to not dig in their heels further and simply drop the issue and say, get the hell away from us, Nahko Bear. Nahko Bear has resigned, and drop him like a hot potato, means that the evidence and information, and this is, of course, my opinion, but, you're all intelligent adults. You can decide what it means that in the past, on numerous of occasions when Winona has been accused of and or has harbored predators in her midst, she hasn't let go. She has not rescinded her support. In fact, she has gone above and beyond to continue to put those people on a pedestal and give them agency so they can go on predating others. But not now. For all of you who continue to defend Nahko Bear and Medicine for the People and say that we are propagating lies. What were some of the posts? That we were propagating lies, that we are spreading gossip, and that we are defaming and slandering when we are merely putting out the evidence and information that is available. It is very clear to me that Winona LaDuke and Honor the Earth had no other option than to get as far away from Nahko Bear as possible so that that stench wouldn't do as much damage as I think it's going to do to her organization and to Winona LaDuke herself. So let's look at the statement, okay? Shall we? Here's what the statement says. It says, "It is with great sadness that we learn of accusations against Nahko Bear for sexually inappropriate behavior. In keeping with the gravity of the situation, Nahko has resigned from the board of Honor the Earth. Honor the Earth has a zero tolerance policy for sexual harassment and inappropriate sexual behavior. We remain committed to protecting the work of our communities and the healing needed from intergenerational trauma. Oppression of women and girls is oppression of the earth. We pray for healing and justice for the women who have come forward and commit to engaging in restorative justice." Okay. So let me break down what I have a problem with in this statement. By the way, I didn't take the time to collect all of the congratulatory comments on this statement that were made throughout the interwebs, but I have never seen so much glad handing. I mean, I think people broke their arms off trying to pat Honor the Earth on the back for this fictional statement. This is a piece of fiction, is what it is. This is a lie. It is with great that's the only part I think is really true. It is with great sadness. That's it. That's the only thing that is true in the whole statement, okay? I'm sure they were very, very sad that there was no way that they could continue to harbor and protect this pedophile. And it was very sad that Winona had to kick a guy she calls her nephew, a guy she considers family, off of her board. And then she says that it is with sadness that they learn. I don't believe she didn't already know and had been ignoring the accusations. In addition, the second paragraph she says, or the next sentence she says, "In keeping with the gravity of the situation, Nahko has resigned from the board." Okay, so because this situation, which is the pedophilia or the sexually inappropriate behavior, he has resigned from the board of Honor the Earth. They have a zero tolerance policy for sexual harassment and inappropriate sexual behavior. The lawsuit against Honor the Earth and you, Winona LaDuke, personally seem to disagree with you and your statement. It seems like you have a history, a pattern of inappropriate conduct as a board and as an individual, harboring criminals and sexual predators. That's what it seems that you have a pattern of. Not one of zero tolerance, not one of disallowing inappropriate sexual conduct. And I'm going to say all of these things, and then I'm going to back them up with evidence. Okay? It says, we remain committed to protecting the work of our communities, the healing needed for intergenerational trauma. Oppression of women and girls is oppression of the earth. Well, as much as I know that people like Winona LaDuke, that people like the Carrizo Come Crudo, that people like the Border Support Network, that people like these indigenous leaders want to have the moral high ground from which they can continue from their bully pulpit to wag their fingers at any non-natives, at any white colonial settlers, to say, we're the ones that have the right to decide whether or not there's a border wall. We're the ones that have the right to decide what immigration policy is. We're the ones that have the right to abolish ICE. We're the ones that have the right to do this, to do that. And we're the First Nations people. So the rest of you, if you're not an original First Nations person, you can zip it. You don't get a say. So I'm sure that Winona and her organization Honor the Earth would like to retain the moral authority, the bully pulpit from which to speak. But I'm going to tell you right now that she and her organization are all but a fraud. I mean, we're going to dig into the background of her and her daddy and her organization's work. I actually wonder if they have ever been committed to protecting indigenous communities or healing intergenerational trauma rather than inflicting it over and over again, invalidating and erasing the voices and supplanting the voices of real indigenous people, of real indigenous sovereignty battles, of real healing of intergenerational trauma. Because it is people exactly like Winona LaDuke, exactly like Nahko Bear, that harm those communities. So I want to share with you some of what was covered in this podcast by Jacqueline Keeler, titled, Let's Talk About Winona LaDuke, Nahko, and Sexual Predators. #MeToo. Hosted by Jacqueline Keeler on the platform Pollen Nation Magazine. Now, here is what she says this program is all about. Take a listen.
Has been an ongoing issue, but of course it has also come out recently in the pandemic with the recent allegations against Nahko, Medicine Bear, I think, or I'm not really sure, but anyway. So and his close ties to Winona LaDuke, and then there are these other very troubling allegations and accusations, and of other men who have been close to her, including Michael Dahl, who actually the Honor the Earth is presently being sued by a former employee, and we'll look into that lawsuit a bit as well, and so we'll see. And I really welcome you to go ahead and make comments. I can see them here on my screen, so please do let me know what you think. The purpose of this show is not to attack this is not a takedown. It's a, we all, I think all of us had, a lot of, feelings for Winona LaDuke, particularly, and we all grew up looking up to her, and it's, I think that it's very difficult to hear these things. I understand that. It's very difficult but at the same time, the allegations are such that we have to listen. We have to hear, because there are victims involved, and it's not just one victim or two victims, or it's a lot. And the things I'm going through right now are things that are in the news, and that have been reported on, or have been publicly stated in social media, or are in lawsuits. Right. So these are things that are they're going to another level. Right.
Yeah, a whole other level. So I recommend that you go and check this podcast out in its entirety. It is very, very revealing. Remember, this is a Native American reporter that has written multiple articles, and she goes on actually to talk about how Winona LaDuke has influenced the lives of many Native American communities and students. I mean, she held up a book on Winona LaDuke that she studied. I have a book by Winona LaDuke that I have also read and shared with my family. She plays a pretty prominent role especially in the Minnesota area with a lot of foundations and social justice
activists
groups
and trainings and stuff. And Jacqueline Keeler, I've been following her since Standing Rock, and she ran a few pages that dealt with Sacred Stone and Standing Rock, and so I've always thought that she's pretty solid. And for her the stuff she says in the show, if you watch the whole thing, we're just having some clips from it. But I encourage you to watch the whole thing, and I think we'll have the link in the comments so you can actually go watch it. But she digs into stuff that's publicly available. She didn't mention us. We had just done a show on similar subject matter with similar, quotes and different things. But she goes a little bit deeper into lawsuits, has all sorts of visuals. I think it's a very quality program.
And I wanted you to talk a little bit about how white funders are really in love with Winona, because I came to know Winona a lot through white organizations and white activists and executive directors really promoting her. And I think that there's something to be said about the fact that white organizations and funders really love people like Winona and her organization.
What has been a phenomenon in this country for quite a long time is that the love for the Indian, and it's created opportunities for fake Indians to come forward and be fake Indians. It was happening in the 60s, all the hippie stuff around rituals and, ceremonies and, people, the way people dressing. And it's carried through into the festival culture, to be an Indian for a day and things like that. And, the white foundations, because most of the foundations are white foundations, the people that actually contribute to them are liberal white people that have money. Not all of them, but most of them that, give the larger donations. And they don't have a clue. And it's easy for them to get caught up into someone who has this charisma and looks the part and rides horses and does wild rice and speaks up for the sacred land, and speaks up against big, huge energy corporations. It's quite a draw, because it makes a foundation look good, like they're really fighting these things in society that need to be fought.
Yes, and that's a problem. Because again, I think that these voices are usurping the voices of other people.
Yep.
Listen to how just the participation in this festival culture, propagated and promoted by Winona LaDuke, Honor the Earth, and Nahko Bear and his medicine tribe. Listen to this.
His band, and I don't know if many of you are familiar with Nahko and the I think he's called the Medicine Band Tribe. I'm not really sure. And he is quite quite famous. He was famous before he became, he did a song about Standing Rock. If you go on YouTube, it has like 2.5 million views. He's very popular in the festival circuit. He claims to be part Native. He claims that he was adopted into a white family. He's multiracial. He claims to be he's Puerto Rican, Filipino, I think, and then also says that he's part Native. I think Apache, and he's also said Navajo, and then there's sometimes he said Cheyenne, right? And so his name Nahko is Cheyenne. He says for bear, and that's his name, the bear. And so he claims that he rediscovered his birth mother here in Portland, Oregon, where I live, and that he found out that she had her mother, his native grandmother, was a pimp and had prostituted her daughter out, and a few daughters, and that's how he came to be, and this is his story, right? And so this story was, I think, reported in different news outlets, but it's never been fact checked. We don't know, and I think that's we don't know if this story is true, but this is the story this is his origin story, and I don't know. I find it. I think that if a native grandmother was a pimp, I think that should be fact checked. I think before we are burdened with that, we should know if that's actually true or not. But this is the story that he tells his followers, and his followers are largely his fans are largely white. If you go on YouTube and watch some of the videos, you'll see a lot of white people dancing around in his videos and doing that kind of new agey hippie festival type dancing, and that's his audience basically. And he does a lot of songs. He has one that's actually has a lot of Lakota things in it, and then it's a lot of self-help stuff too. So it's pretty interesting. But it's to me, watching it feels, I don't know, watching all these white people do their little dance they do, and talk about it's very. I can't relate to it as a Native person, quite honestly. And the use of my dad's language feels weird and appropriative, quite frankly. And so I wasn't that comfortable with what I was seeing.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there. First of all, she talks about the fact that Nahko Bear, as you may recall, talked about how his grandmother trafficked him. That basically he calls his grandmother a pimp.
Yeah. And
could you tell, that Jacqueline Keeler takes umbrage with that? Mm-hmm. She's like, she's not calling him a liar, but she kind of is, and she's saying that it's not verified. None of the things, including his heritage, are unverified. Here's one of the comments from the people watching this podcast when she said this. A woman by the name of April McGill responds by saying, trafficking stories of ancestors or pimping is the new story to dilute questions about lineage. We know from our ancestors that it's a tradition to ask each other who our family is. I get tired of these fake Indians saying it's a form of lateral violence when we ask who their relatives are, what their family names are. So this person, if you didn't understand what she just said, is saying, oh, that's so nobody can, this whole thing about how his mother was trafficked, and that's how because his grandmother was a pimp, and that's how she got pregnant, which, he's repeated here in this article. You can see that he was adopted by a white family, a middle class American family in the Northwest, and that he was unaware of his background for many years. He left home as a teenager, hoping to discover his past. And it said that his mother was forced into human trafficking, and his birth came as a result of a rape incident. Well, it's pretty hard to find out what your true lineage is if your grandmother pimped out your mom and she was raped, right?
Yep.
That'll shut down the questions real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we can never truly know the answers. And you're being an insensitive, rude jerk if you're asking any questions about Nahko, about his background, about who he really is. And, this is very damaging what he does, in addition to being appropriative, where they're all being pretend Indians. Remember, she said most of his fans are white people that love to play Indian. One of the comments here was by a person saying that they understood that Nahko's music had been helpful to motivate people, but that he didn't have connections to indigenous resistance, that he keeps calling this place Cascadia, which is incredibly damaging to indigenous people trying to organize. And someone responds with anger, motivate? I know he motivated pretend Indians to appropriate mangled Lakota prayers and to become pan-indigenous pretend Indians like Nahko. So all that he promotes is more of what he is. That's what that person, Catherine, responding to this idea that at least his music was motivational. No, it was motivating pretend Indians to pretend Indian. Okay. If this feels and sounds a lot like other predators I've reported on, like Red Wolf Pope, it's because it is. It's because it is. And let me share with you from this documentary, from this show, this podcast that Jacqueline Keeler did, that she researched a documentary film about Winona LaDuke. And here is what she put in the documentary. This, by the way, is a documentary that is just about to come out, okay? It just came out. So it was filmed recently, okay? It was filmed after Standing Rock, featuring Winona LaDuke. And this is what she put in it. Winona LaDuke put this in her own movie about herself.
So we'll go ahead and try to play this. Let's see here. Okay. So I wasn't able to record the sound, but this is Michael Dahl, and he is identified in the documentary as her spiritual advisor. And he's pretty notable looking. They're doing a horse ride to basically, let me go back and see if I can trying to freeze him there. There we go. They were doing a horse ride. She had, in the documentary, Winona had a vision where she feels that horses have medicine. They stamp out snakes, so then they could stamp out the black snake, which is the pipeline. This was the rationale behind the rides. And so they got these horse rides together, and it wasn't a lot of people. I mean, in the documentary, it looks like it was maybe 7 or 8, several of them her children, and then some folks like him, people who were very close to her. And so he was her spiritual advisor, and he's pretty distinctive looking. He speaks Ojibwe. He's actually giving a blessing in Ojibwe here. And I was like, I wonder who this guy is. So then I Googled him, Michael Dahl, and the first thing that came up was that there was a warrant out for his arrest because he had, as early as actually in January of 2017. So I wrote this article in probably spring of 2017. He had been, someone had driven by his property on the White Earth Reservation, and in the field there had seen horses lying dead. Another tribal member had seen this and reported it, and 3 horses had died. They had starved to death, and 2 of those horses had been on this horse ride. So 2 of the horses whose medicine was used in a ceremonial way to fight the pipeline, he starved them to death. And they were trying to find him for the death of these horses, right? And so anyway, so I was like, whoa, I'm like here working on a review of this movie, and here I find this out, and it just seemed so shocking to me. And so I have Ojibwe friends in Minnesota, and so I called some of them up, and I had other questions too, because they keep her mother, who is not Native American, her mother is Jewish American. She said that her husband, the father of Winona, Victor LaDuke, who also goes by the name Sun Bear, he told her in the 1950s, when Winona was born, that Winona meant first daughter in Ojibwe, right? But actually, it doesn't. I was thinking, like, wait a minute, that Winona is not a Ojibwe word; it's a Dakota word, right? In Dakota, we have names for the first 6 kids. So, like, there's first daughter, second daughter, third daughter, fourth daughter, fifth daughter, sixth, and the same thing with boys: first, second. People know Chasky, and Winona means the oldest daughter in a family. Right. I'm Winona. I mean, a lot of people are Winona. And so I thought I was like, wait, did we borrow that word from the Ojibwe? I mean, I don't know, and so did they borrow it from us? What happened? So I contacted some of my friends who were Ojibwe language specialists in Minnesota, and they told me, no, it's not an Ojibwe word. It's totally a Dakota word, And so I was like, that's weird that after all these years that they don't know this. I mean, I'm sure it was, in 1950, whatever, when her husband, Winona's father was a Hollywood actor. He played Indians in Hollywood. And her mother was an art student who later became a professor here in Oregon. And so it was like, it's weird that they don't know that this is not an Ojibwe word, right? And so, but anyway, so I asked my Ojibwe friends, and they referred me to people in White Earth. So I talked to some folks from White Earth, and they told me that the reason why he had fled and they couldn't find him was because there were accusations of pedophilia against him, that he was the Ojibwe language instructor on the reservation in the schools, and that he had been molesting children. And this was the first time I heard about this. And I was just like, what? Oh my God. This is, I don't know, maybe March of 2017 or something. And I just was completely shocked, and nowhere in this documentary is that mentioned. They don't really give him a lot of background. She just has a little line on the bottom that explains that he's the spiritual advisor for Winona LaDuke, and you see him speaking the language, and he's very prominent because of his fur hat, but you never get to, they don't explore who he is as a person in the documentary, right? And so it was sort of this big question mark, and so I was like, that's weird, and so then so anyway, so then I okay, so yeah, I know the horses. I think here's Anne is like saying, oh my God, those horses, right? Yeah, it's really shocking, especially since they were in ceremony. To kill the horses, to allow them to be starved to death, is particularly. And truly, I spoke to some of the horsewomen, white women who helped with the horse ride, and two of these horses belonged to them. Some of them are quite prominent horse breeders. One from Ireland and one here in the United States. And one of those horses is actually a descendant of a Triple Crown winner or something. These were not ordinary horses. She has a lot of support, and they told me, they filled my ears with so much more about how the movie was made. They told me that some of the scenes were faked. The scene where they're threshing the wild rice, they told me that scene was just done for the cameras. They have no system to actually thresh wild rice. That was just a totally staged thing. And they also told me that they had a really hard time getting Winona to pick up the hay bales on the way. Like, they would so she would have hay at different places along the route, and she would never pick them up. And so, so that was, but I mean, so the lawsuit that I've been talking about, the lawsuit that was filed by Margaret Campbell, a former employee of Winona LaDuke's Honor of the Earth, alleges that a sexual assault, that Michael Dahl had sexually assaulted her. And on top, that it was well known in the community. In 2015, they had a huge, on the White Earth Reservation, they had a huge community kind of get together to discuss the allegations against him, right? And that she protected him, and this is what the lawsuit contains. And that also that he, I'm pretty sure that it says that he molested boys on the ride itself, and that in fact in the exhibits of the lawsuit it says that then when they woke up the next morning, they camped out, they woke up at breakfast, he told everyone that he had molested the boys, and that this is according to the lawsuit, that she alleges that Winona's response was that he had Tourette's, that this wasn't real. He had Tourette's, and so this is why he said these things. Later, I did talk to folks, and they said that these allegations were not new in 2015. In fact, they had been ongoing for 10 years. So when she found out in 2015, it was not a new thing. It was, and in the lawsuit, you can see in the exhibits that where she's actively seeking to protect him.
Okay, I reported all of this a year ago.
Yep.
So let's unpack, because I told you a year ago when this lawsuit came up, I told you about the allegations. I told you about the dead horses. I told you about the fact that this guy did jail time for killing those horses. What you just learned right now is that there was a movie, a documentary film made about Winona LaDuke, and she had the audacity to put the pedophile in the movie and call him her spiritual leader. Right?
Yeah.
In addition to which, we now know that the allegations in the lawsuit say that he molested children on this ride. Now, according to Winona LaDuke, the reason why they took the horses and rode along the pipeline was because she claims to have had a spiritual vision. And in this vision, she saw that the medicine of the horses, who can stomp on snakes and kill snakes, would have an effect, a spiritual, prophetic effect on this horse ride. How sick is it that she took a pedophile on the horse ride and kids for him to predate on? That she covered it up even as this man came out and told everyone, I did sexual things to those kids. And she told everyone, forget what you just heard. You didn't just hear that. Oh, he has Tourette's. And they starved the horses. And I say they because you just heard Jacqueline Keeler said that she talked to people about this horse ride, and Winona did not pick up the hay. What is hay? Hay is for horses.
That's right.
Did you see the pictures of these horses out at Standing Rock? Go back and look. Go back and look and check out the horses and check out their ribs. Check out the horses and check out their ribs at Standing Rock. They were using these horses because there was a spiritual prophecy she needed to fulfill that included predators and starving horses. This is what Winona LaDuke and her organization do. It goes deeper than just covering up for Nahko Bear. You understand? It goes deeper. It damages the culture. It damages the integrity of indigenous culture, of indigenous tradition, of medicine, of prophecy. It smears it. It sullies it. That's what Winona LaDuke does. Here's a comment about Michael Dahl, who she prominently featured in her film. It says, Michael Dahl is not credible. His history with boys on the White Earth Reservation has been going on for decades. No one says anything because Mike is a fake medicine man. Plus, his treatment of the horses he had in his care, it's true, they starved and he did jail time.
Wow.
Duke, your thoughts?
That is like, we reported on this and we've read this before and we see it in multiple places, but it's just astounding, especially that he admits things out loud for someone to try to make you spin your head backwards to forget, and it's just so incredible that I used to believe in Winona LaDuke so much because I got bought into all her fame and her representation. And when I look back and I listen to Jacqueline, her program, in fact, it jars some things that I think back and I go, yeah, I remember thinking that White Earth Land Recovery Project was doing all this great stuff. And then she reports that, yeah, Winona never ever gave the land to the tribe. I'm like, what? So she's been a fraud since the beginning.
And don't forget, at the beginning of this pandemic, didn't they have an online concert with the Indigo Girls to raise money?
Yep.
I mean, they're
Yeah,
always
and they raised
constantly-
$200,000. It's just this recent, and Indigo Girls, has worked with Honor for the Earth. I've been to their concerts here in Fargo Moorhead in the past, and it's like they raise all sorts of money, and
I
that's
mean,
it.
I mean, are you surprised at the animal abuse? Are you really surprised at the animal abuse when you know that these people have, their festival culture with, that there's children involved, that there's predators, sexual predators involved? Is that really that surprising? But that's not all. A woman who was either employed or closely connected to Winona LaDuke and Honor the Earth by the name of Lorna Haynes also made accusations that Winona LaDuke bailed out of jail the man that beat her to a bloody pulp. Here's a post about that by one of the people watching this video, this podcast, in which they talk about the accusations by Lorna Haynes that Winona LaDuke protected boyfriend by the name of Andy instead of Lorna, who was her employee. I got that right, I guess. Mm-hmm. Lorna was beaten by Andy and thrown out of a car. They threw her out of a car and left her in the road out in the middle of nowhere after beating her within an inch of her life. Guess who paid the bail? Winona LaDuke. And then the same woman, Betsy, also mentions that LaDuke makes hundreds of thousands as the figurehead of Native society. Nonprofit money supports her travels. It's a big spider web. And Margaret, the woman that made this lawsuit, is just a small bug. In the scheme of things. There's always more ugly things if you just look a little further. Do you still believe the Honor the Earth statement that they will continue to work to protect Native communities and whatever the heck they said? I mean, it's just a lie. But there's more. There's a reason why Winona LaDuke is the way that she is. And it's because of Vincent LaDuke, her daddy, who also has a white mother, who also is a pretend shaman, like this Michael Dahl person that was predating on children. Let's take a listen from the video, the podcast, what Keeler discussed about Sun Bear.
And it was in this context that the allegations arose of sexual misconduct. You can go to, I think, New Age Fraud. That's an old website. They have a lot of different, you can check on people and see what check out what people had to say about certain folks. And there's a lot about her father, Sun Bear. He was actually, pull up another picture here. He was actually let me see her. He was actually quite controversial because he was actually let me get this one here. Take this one down. He was actually accused of selling Lakota ceremonies. This is actually Winona with Michael Dahl. I didn't pull up any pictures of Sun Bear. I'm sorry. I can maybe look some up. But he was actually protested by AIM in the 1980s. He was selling Lakota ceremonies to white people, and Russell Means was out there protesting him, and so that was sort of and then also he was accused of the accusations that you can see at New Age Fraud is in New Hampshire. He was alleged to have molested a 16-year-old girl, right? And there are other allegations, but that's probably the one that was the most documented, right? And so, you know, he was a guru. He lived with a whole bunch of people who thought that he had all the answers. And when you live in a situation like that, I think that it's, you know, you don't have the same checks on your behavior as you might have, right? And you have to think, like, how strange would it be, you know, to be, you know, I don't know, whatever, you know, to know you're part Native, right? To be raised in a white family. You know, her mother married another a white professor, so she was raised by two professors in Oregon, and both white, and to have a father who is Indian, but he's a guru, right? And one of the things I found when I was going through the documentary was that a lot of the things that she was saying that her father taught her were things that, if you go back and you look at old articles of her father, with you know, like back from the 80s and 90s, he's telling these exact same quotes to his followers, right? There's nothing special he told her.
There's nothing special that he told her, and a lot of it was made up gobbledygook. He just made it up. He had some kind of like zodiac sign and stuff. I mean, here's when you know that something is fishy. Karisoko Crew, the tribe, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
When you have to create a tribe where none existed, right? And the majority of your followers are white people and pretend Indians like Nahko Bear, there might be something wrong with your tribe. Okay? I'm just saying. And, you know, the accusations of pedophilia go back to her dad, including the ugly fake shamanism, the you know, giving these camps, these ceremonies that he held in New York. And apparently they were full of non-natives that paid money for ceremonies in which he made some of these people pipe keepers.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, here's a comment from one of the people watching where they talk about the fact that her daddy made non-natives pipe keepers in these fake ceremonies. And furthermore, in this documentary, Jacqueline Keeler responds by saying that the first daughter in the Black Snake documentary that is about Winona LaDuke, she lauds her father and gives him credit for the teachings for her work. So all of this gobbledygook made up nonsense from her pretend Indian fake shaman cultist daddy is the foundation for Honor the Earth, and the stuff she's doing now, it can't be good. And this is what Jacqueline Keeler says about what she told people in this documentary. She was trying to whitewash the past. And of course, she would have to whitewash the past because she never grew up on the reservation. She never was at White Earth. She never grew up around Native people. She grew up in New York. She grew up in Oregon. She grew up far away from Native life and Native tradition. And the reason why was because her daddy was a teacher of Ojibwe language on White Earth, and he was diddling the children. They ran him out of town on a rail. There was still criminal investigation into his diddling of children when he died. This was not a good man, and she was still okay in a movie that was made about her a year or two ago. This is what she wants in her legacy film, Winona, the first daughter and the Black Snake.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, like I said, the extent that the fake Indian has gotten, and it's giving people a lot of cash. You know, the whole Standing Rock was the prelude to a lot of stuff that's even happening all over the country when it comes to activism. And we're covering these things on KPPP LP 88.1 Fargo Moorhead, because it's really important to get this information out. We didn't want to continue reporting Standing Rock. We thought it was kind of over once it was over. But it seems like it's never over.
Well, no, and there's so many connections to the bad actors and to the bad actions of these fraudulent people. There's a lot more to be uncovered. There's a lot of whitewashing and hiding and, sweeping things under the rug, because this isn't just about one sexual predator. These are multiple complaints. And it's not just about Winona LaDuke individually, about her work at Honor the Earth. It's about the body of her work. Guess what else she was involved with? Winona LaDuke decided she was going to found an organization called the White Earth Land Recovery Project. Now, can you explain what happened with the White Earth Reservation land? Because it got parceled out and people that are non-native began to buy it, and it became this whole thing.
Oh yeah, if you study the all the different policies and laws that were passed, to make Native people lose their land base, actually creating reservations in the first place, forcing natives across the Mississippi River, all the different acts that have went to kind of undo indigenous people having any culture. Once they had reservations, they made people competent or incompetent. If you're more full-blood Indian, you were incompetent. If you had more white in you or you're connected to white people, bloodline, you would be given title for your land. And what people did is they came and they bought the land, or they gave you a piece of land you weren't even part of, way over there. You're living over here, and people offered you money for it. So, and on White Earth, a lot of it got checkerboarded up. There's towns in the middle of the reservation that are just white people's towns, and then there's towns that are just native people there with no doors or nothing. And then you go to like Detroit Lakes, which is a booming, big city. And you go to these other places, Monoman, that has a casino now, and it's bringing in all sorts of money, but that's for the tribe. But the town itself, it was mixed, white people and indigenous people. So there's a lot of land that's been bought by white people since the late 1800s that checkerboarded up White Earth Reservation.
And the goal of the White Earth Land Recovery Project was to buy it back and give it to the reservation.
Yeah.
Give it to the native people.
Supposedly. I thought it was, when I first heard about it, I was like, wow, that's a great program where they would buy the land at the commercial price, the going price, and then give it back to the tribe. So buying the land back, give it to tribal and have their land mass back. I thought that's a pretty good thing, but wait till you hear what really happened.
Wait till you hear what really happened. Also, I want to thank Miss Red Badger, who is having the most aha moment of her day so far, learning all the things about Winona LaDuke's daddy, Sun Bear. She says, with her gift of $10 for our station's work, "Holy, I never knew that her dad was the Sun Bear dude. The more you know." Yes, we're doing PSAs over here all day, every day. Da 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 da. The more you know. Yeah, and then you can avoid some sexual predators by learning and by knowing. But these weren't the only ones. Thank you, Rose Little Butler, who comments Dennis Banks and Crow Dog sold ceremonies all over the country.
Wow.
And you know what? She's not the only one that has documented these atrocities against Native American culture. And that's what it is, because it's damaging. What the White Earth Land Recovery Project did was to steal, well, I think it's stealing, because they bought up a bunch of land, but here's what they did with it. Take a listen to Jacqueline Keeler on this topic.
About Winona, about particularly the White Earth Land Recovery Project. And see, where is it? I can maybe pull it up. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, here's the letter. Here we go. Actually, let me pull it up here. Let me make it bigger, so you can read it. Let me pull it up on the screen. So this is a letter that was sent by the tribe to. Let me go ahead and go here to this one here. Can you see that now? It's actually of the letter that the White Earth what the tribe sent to the White Earth Land Recovery Project. This was in July 28, of 2019, or July 18th of 2019, almost a year ago. And what they say is that White Earth Land Recovery Project financial inquiry. So pursuant to article, basically what they're asking is that it says that they have not. It says that, let me just go ahead and read this thing. So this message is being delivered at the request of tribal members that want to know if any lands have been transferred from the White Earth Land Recovery Project to the White Earth Reservation Business Committee for the benefit of tribal members. As of this date, and according to the White Earth Land Department, WELRP has not conveyed any titles over to the tribe. The White Earth Band of Minnesota Chippewa Tribe has received 0 parcels of land from the WELRP. No lands have been transferred since 1989, which is when Winona founded this nonprofit, right? And I looked at old interviews that she had done in the 90s, probably 1994, 96, and then she's very clear in those interviews that this organization's purpose is to return land to the tribe, right? And by then, even by the 94 interview, they'd already obtained 20,000 acres. I'd have to look that up, but I remember that. But it's tribal members have raised concerns related to the representation of White Earth Reservation and the donations received by the WELRP since its founding, which have been represented to be for the benefit of tribal members, even though no lands have been conveyed. According to the organization, the mission of WELRP is to facilitate the recovery of the original land base of the White Earth Indian Reservation, while preserving and restoring traditional practices and sound land stewardship, language fluency, community development, and strengthening our spiritual and cultural heritage. WLRP was founded by Winona LaDuke, White Earth enrollee, and the latest tax filings, Form 990, submitted by Ms. LaDuke on its website from 2012, show net assets in excess of $1 million. Further inquiry is needed to ascertain certain assets that have been represented to the benefit of tribal members. Okay, so this is
Wow.
This is the person that ran for vice president with Ralph Nader
Exactly.
on the Green Party ticket. Do you think she's been honoring the earth?
No.
Has she been helping? So going back to that statement that I brought up to you at the beginning of the show, if you're just tuning in, by the way, this program titled Winona LaDuke and Nahko Bear and Winona LaDuke, you're listening to 88.1 FM KPPP LP, Fargo-Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And today we are covering, this is the second installment of my discussions about Nahko Bear specifically, but it's not the first time I've talked about Winona LaDuke or Honor the Earth or the involvement of a number of very questionable people from that organization, from whatever different organizations she has been involved with, and how problematic they are. Millions of dollars have been raised for the project she was working on before Honor the Earth to buy land that was never conveyed to the tribe. She hasn't helped people in this podcast. Jacqueline Keeler says that Winona LaDuke grew, the land that she's purchased where she's living is very close to some place, I don't know if it's like the projects or some kind of like housing development or area that's quite poor, where a lot of Native American kids, many of them who appear in a documentary about the poverty in this particular area, talk about how, they grew up feeling like they were invisible, feeling like they didn't matter to anyone, and that surviving that and being able to, have any kind of education or success after having been in that was really a miracle. And Winona LaDuke has been living in that area a stone's throw from where these boys grew up with such horrible lives, and she hasn't noticed, she hasn't done a single thing to help the people right in her vicinity. That's what Jacqueline Keeler points out. But that's just one of the things about Honor the Earth, about the White Earth Land Recovery Project, and anything that Winona LaDuke associates herself with that is questionable, seriously questionable. And many people have been asking and talking about these things, including this comment where a person by the name of Mr. View states that they want to know why Winona has been quiet about racist gatekeeping by liberal white supremacists in the so-called Pacific Northwest when she was told about it. Why she teamed up with Spring Creek Project and others to further invisibilize indigenous resistance. There's been people who've asked me, what is the point? What are these people doing? What is white? What is this Honor the Earth? What's their real goal? If it's not what they say it is, which I can tell you, to me it seems very clear, that's not their real mission. Is not the things they say. What is the real mission? Well, from what I can tell, from what I see, the outcomes for people, intentions mean nothing. Actions and outcomes mean everything. It is exactly what that person said. It's to invisibilize, to further invisibilize indigenous resistance, indigenous people, indigenous leaders, indigenous causes, because that's what they're doing. They silence the voices of real indigenous resistance and real indigenous campaigns, and they supplant them with fake Indians, posers like Winona LaDuke and like the people that she puts on a pedestal. Here is another one of the predators harbored by Honor the Earth's Winona LaDuke. Listen to this clip.
This is an allegation, actually, by a young man, and he actually alleges that he was sexually he's accusing Winona of housing an abuser. Anthony Sewell is the alleged pedophile, and that he did a lot of posts about that, about Winona's activities there, so I can pull this one up. Hold on. Go. This one is Winona, not my hero. I appreciate your work in the past, but this is inexcusable. We are holding you accountable. Me too. Not my hero, Winona LaDuke. And in the lawsuit that Molly Campbell filed, there is the description of allegations of the abuse of Michael Dahl of children, and then in this case, here's another young man. Anthony Sewell is an artist. These allegations have not been proven against him, but they are being made vociferously by young people, and so it's he's an artist from Northern California, a native, and he has been repeatedly called out, and now he apparently allegedly has been found he's hanging out with Winona, I guess is what this thing is saying. And so actually it says that she hid him on her hemp farm, and the man ended up molesting more people, including mine. These are of course allegations, and but we really sort of maybe they're very serious allegations.
Oh, yeah.
They're very serious allegations that have been going on for a very long time, and people seem to continue to ignore them, and people seem to continue to sidestep them instead of addressing them. And it is a terrible shame because it does invisibilize the voices of Indigenous people. And this is it's made even more sad that the actions of Winona LaDuke herself were reported to Honor the Earth's board of directors. And this was done back in 2015. I'm going to read to you from a letter that was featured in this podcast that was posted to the Angry Ojibwe Women's Chronicles on February 19th of 2015. It says, to Winona LaDuke, Honor the Earth Executive Director, Board of Directors, White Earth Land Recovery Project Board of Directors, Honor the Earth's Advisory Board. We greet you as relatives seeking to proactively address the pervasive horror of sexual violence within the Native community. We write to you because we are deeply disturbed by your response to learning of sexual violence within Honor the Earth. We address this letter to you, Winona, and the board of the White Earth Recovery Land Project and Honor the Earth, because the manner in which accusations of sexual harassment and sexual violence are handled has grave and profound implications for our cultures, ways of life, and the future of our communities. The choices an organization and its leadership make can either reinforce a climate in which the voices of victims and their supporters are silenced, or help bring about a world in which those who are brave enough to come forward are supported. Your organization's actions to minimize and excuse the allegations against Michael Dahl based on your personal relationship with him is disrespectful to victims in our communities. First, your actions are disrespectful toward the mother who stood publicly for her son, a victim of Dahl, at a Minnesota Indians Women's Sexual Assault Coalition feast in White Earth. She had the courage to refuse gifts from a bundle offered by Dahl. Your actions have also been dismissive of the young woman you employed who brought forward sexual harassment allegations. The account of the employed who brought the mother of the victim was shared with Winona LaDuke and Honor the Earth staff by Bonnie Claremont and Lorna Stevens Hunter, not to invite questioning of the legitimacy of these claims, but to enable Honor the Earth to act appropriately and to stop endangering the community by employing in a position of power the named predator Michael Dahl. As women, we already experience the endemic nature of misogyny, harassment, commodification of women and children, and violence against them in our communities. When our own Native organizations continue to dismiss reports of sexual violence and sexual harassment as insignificant, we contribute to the colonial climate of fear and hopelessness. The nature of the sexual violence that occurs in our communities can be devastating. We know that when perpetrators are not held accountable, victims are at a much higher risk for suicide, drug addiction, homelessness, young people who are already at risk of being deeply traumatized when adults who purport to be community leaders and activists cause them harm, which becomes particularly relevant when youth flee our communities and become at risk for prostitution, trafficking, and prison. About 80% of individuals in institutions have been victims of sexual or domestic violence. Incidents of so-called false reporting of child sexual abuse are extremely low, while denial by and on behalf of predators is very common. Denial, dishonesty, and deceit are the most insidious responses to reports of rape and sexual abuse because they condone or ignore the serious harm that is happening. Official responses of indifference, such as those of Honor the Earth, send a very clear message to perpetrators. You can continue being abusive and never be held accountable. Moreover, when organizations and their leadership publicly question the reports of sexual abuse and take punitive actions against those who stand with the victims, we are sending another clear message. We will deny and silence you when you come forward to seek support. Rather than silencing the victims or discrediting allegations, we advocate the following approach for Indigenous organizations who are receiving reports of abuse. 1, take a victim-centered approach. Act in good faith toward victims who come forward. Do not minimize, deny, or say he shouldn't have done that. 2, help give control back to victims and acknowledge their right to control over their lives. 3, contact victims to provide them services or offer help, but do not interrogate them. 4, validate the victim's courage to disclose and also the bravery of their families. 5, hold offenders accountable. Since we know criminal justice systems often cannot properly do this, we must recall our traditional forms of justice, such as shunning and boycotting. I won't go into reading the whole thing, but there's a lot more. Obviously, this is not an organization. This letter, again, just for those of you who missed me telling you the date, comes from 2015. It is now 2020. This is not the first time that this so-called leader, Winona LaDuke, has been held accountable, has been called on the carpet for harboring predators that harm Indigenous youth. And yet, there's a movie coming out about her soon. Yet, we continue to see the ongoing damage caused by Honor the Earth and Winona LaDuke unfettered. Here's another comment from the podcast about her behavior. Betsy also notes that if you dig into the records, Winona LaDuke will fire you, or she'll get rid of the board or boards, depending on what organization she's talking about. If you tell her there's something wrong, you get fired. And the Indian Problem responds, she'll also slander you professionally, block you out of work, and send her goons after you. There is at least one account of assault of someone by Winona's people done in this manner.
Wow.
That's not all. She's a known agitator. Remember I told you? You've seen the protests popping off all over the world. You saw the way that people went to protest in Mexico. Mm-hmm. What do these people do? They agitate. And that's exactly what she is known for. Here are some comments from the podcast. One of them says that with all abuses inflicted on family and friends and First Nations people, maybe it's time to clean out our own pedo backyards and show the colonial system that they are next. I think that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. Helen comments, the entire board of Honor the Earth is liable. And Betsy says that Winona is an agitator that leaves the situation where she agitates, and our people get arrested, like Standing Rock. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the FBI knows all about it. And guess what? I told you, just like when I was covering the caravans, the FBI knows all about it. So does Homeland Security. So does Border Patrol. So does Interpol. These folks have been watched for a long time. They're known to be traffickers of people, children, things, drugs, etc. These things were going on at Standing Rock, and now they're still going on in the protests that are going out around the country. And guess what? It's not just fake pretend Indians and fake spiritual predator leaders. It's also Hollywood, lest you forget. Remember that Hollywood has been present in all of this. Remember, Sun Bear was an actor. Winona's mama is a artist, right? She does art for a living. She married an actor that played an Indian in many movies. And of course, there's comments about her Winona's connections to Jane Fonda. I believe they spoke together in an event where Winona actually took the microphone away from Jane Fonda.
Really?
Yes, and Mr. View comments that, funders, organizers, they want people that can talk to whites, like Winona LaDuke, not indigenous resistance, not young indigenous female activists. And that is exactly what we saw at Standing Rock. A lot of Johnny-come-lately Indians that decided they were Indian overnight after arriving at Standing Rock, and a lot of their white allies were at the forefront of what we saw happening at Standing Rock and in protests after. One of those people who also is on that watch list for Homeland Security is Doug McLean. And you can see all of the different organizations and groups that are tagged in this video, including Nahko Bear, right? Including Jane Fonda, including Robert Redford, including Neil Young, Indigenous Rising Media, Nahko Bear, Medicine for the People, The Guardian, The Daily Show, The Daily Coast, The Daily Beast, Reverend Billy and the Stop Shopping Gospel Choir, Willie Nelson, Barack Obama, the White House, Mark Ruffalo, Nomiki Konst, right? Mm-hmm. And that isn't even the whole list. That isn't even the whole list. Lest you forget, there were so many different actors. They were also, Nahko Bear was also connected to politicians like the Bernie Sanders Brigade, the People for Bernie. Nahko Bear opened at an event for Bernie Sanders. Nahko has been featured on events that AOC is part of. They're all connected. In a blog, you can find out much more about the history of her daddy and these fake shaman and why they are so popular, why they are used, how people fall into this work of being fake shaman and making money off of this. In this blog link I will share with my followers on this program called jpwade.wordpress.com/tag/fraud, you can find a story that includes Sun Bear, Vincent LaDuke, and many others, which the writer calls the 4 swindling swine. The 4 swindling swine, they write in this blog, the bear tribe of Sun Bear, Vincent LaDuke, which was picked up and transformed into 4 Winds Institution of Bad Gas by the likes of Phil Lane Jr., who holds claim to Crazy Horse's pipe bundle, who has no leadership in his ancestry, yet claims to be a hereditary chief, that has been transformed into new forms of rainbow warriors, where some are led by First Nations people, is migrating into the Idle No More movement through obscure symbology, fluffy words of zealots embedded into net media messages to invoke subliminal seeding for unsuspecting, uneducated, ignorant prospects to capture awakening minds.
Wow.
And there's more. You should take a look at it for yourselves, because a lot of the spiritual leadership that we saw, including at Standing Rock, goes all the way back to these blogs. This Mr. Phil Lane Jr. included, as well as Arvo Looking Horse. Arvo Looking Horse. Yes, the guy that you saw at Standing Rock. The guy that you saw involved in so many of these things. Pictured here next to Phil Lane Jr., Arvo Looking Horse, Reuben George, and Leonard Crow Dog. With a caption, another quartet for Gasland. And it says underneath the photo, is it really about tar sands and sacred lands? Yeah, right. Lol. Mm-hmm. Because you have to question when they tell you that they are the protectors of the sacred and the protectors of the women and the protectors of the children and the protectors of the traditions and this and that. You got to ask, are their actions matching their words? They can talk really a good game, but are their actions, is their history representative of what they claim? In the case of Winona LaDuke and her organizations and the pattern of her behavior and the people that she has propped up, including Nahko Bear now, and Medicine for the People, the answer is no. And I will continue to bring you more of the connections to not only Nahko Bear, but also Honor the Earth, Winona LaDuke, and all of the things and all of the people that have supported Nahko Bear, that have defended Nahko Bear, that have propped him up and traveled with him and gone and followed him from festival to festival, all of whom have in one way or another been connected to my reporting about these con artivists here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You've been listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. God bless and good night.